Hey everybody, Adam here with Hometown Acres. Welcome back. The firewood around here is piling up, and that is all because of the Easton Made Evo. We have now made more firewood in the last month than we made in the entire year of 2024. So inside the building here, we have exactly 40 IBC totes of stacked firewood that is drying and seasoning, ready to sell for sometime this summer or early fall. And then down here in the drying yard, we have transitioned from stacking the baskets to letting the wood fall in loose off the end of the barrel screener. We have 23 IBC totes of loose wood in here. This will all be for bulk deliveries. What I find most interesting about those 63 baskets of wood that we made with the Evo here is that it was all made with one chain. That is one of the most common questions we get about the firewood processor is how long does a chain last? How many cords of wood can you make before you have to swap the chain out? And so far, we smoked one chain the very first day that Andrew was here because we put a dirty log through it. And that's probably the number one thing I'll tell you is it all depends on the quality of wood you're putting through the machine. If you've got dirty wood or frozen logs, the chain's not going to last nearly as long. But since I swapped out that first chain and put this one on, we have made 63 baskets, which works out to roughly 21 cords of wood on one chain. I mean, it's just such a completely different world when you go from a regular chainsaw chain to the 404 chains that these firewood processors run. And even after those 21 cords that we have made with this chain, it's still cutting good. I don't see any reason to change it out right now, but that does bring me to the next thing that I wanted to show you guys. And the first thing that I have found about this machine that I'm not particularly fond of, and I shouldn't say that I'm not fond of it, it's just I haven't gotten used to it yet because I've only done one chain swap, but that is just the way in which this whole mechanism in here works. Changing a chain is not that difficult because you just need to loosen a couple of bolts, drop the chainsaw bar down, give you enough slack to get the chain off. But when you have to go change the bar, getting it back on can be kind of a pain because there's a number of different plates in here that you have to line up to get the bolts back through. So you've got this plate here, the chainsaw bar, another black plate. I don't know if you can see right there, it's kind of a spacer plate, this blue one, and then there's another piece of steel on the back. Some of those are slotted, so it does make it a little bit easier, but it can be a little cumbersome. You almost need 3 or 4 hands to get all of those holes lined back up to get a bar back on there. Again, it's just something that I need to get used to. I need to do it a couple of times. I'm sure I'll get quicker at it, but it did take me a little bit of time to do it the first time. That being said, it's not something you should have to do all that often. We are on 21 cords right now with no reason to need to change or sharpen the chain that's on here. And really the only part that's kind of annoying is when you have to change the bar, which you should have to do even less than the chain. Speaking of which, I have the original chain here that I want to take up to the shop and get sharpened, and I've got a new tool for sharpening chains. Let me take you up and show you what it is. All right, so here is the new tool that we got. It is a bench grinder made from Oregon. Now, if you guys have been following since like way back in the beginning, I think my 10th or 15th video or something was on this benchtop chainsaw grinder. This thing was extremely cheap. This was $20 from Rural King, okay? And this is about as cheap as they come. And it does the job. I mean, it'll sharpen a regular chainsaw chain, and it does an okay job. It just lacks a little bit of, I guess, refinement and adjustability. So really, you can only set your depth gauge, you can set your angle, but as far as this angle is not adjustable, this angle is not adjustable, and it's just kind of cheap plastic. Like there's a lot of play and slop in the actual hinge here. So as you're sharpening a tooth, needless to say, this is just a very low quality benchtop grinder. Again, $20 from Rural King. Now, this is a name brand one. A lot of actual saw sharpening shops, this is what they use. This is more professional grade, and it comes with a professional grade price tag. This is a $500 benchtop grinder. I think it was actually on sale. I did buy this with my own money off of Amazon. If you're interested in getting something like this, I will leave a link in the description below where I could possibly earn a little bit of a commission to help out the channel. But what I want to see is I want to take this one off, get this one set up, and see what's the difference between a $20 benchtop chainsaw grinder versus a $500 one. All right, so we've got the new Oregon grinder installed here on the bench. I took the old one off. It's just sitting here balancing, but I wanted to show them to you side by side because it really demonstrates the difference between $20 and $500. First thing I notice immediately is the size of the wheel. On the $20 one is only 4 1/8 inch thick or diameter. and the wheel on this one is I think 5 7/8. So much bigger wheel, which is going to give you more inertia, spin better, and probably sharpen better. The next thing I notice is this one has a light on it, which is really nice for when you're working, so you can actually see the tooth, because before you advance the chain, you want to physically examine each tooth before you move on. But so this one actually has a light on it so you can see the tooth. And then just everything about this, like I said before, the hinge on this one had a lot of slop to it. This one's nice and solid. There's a lot more metal, aluminum, steel parts on this one. This one is basically all plastic. And then even just things like your, angle adjustment here feels more rigid. The biggest reason that I needed it, because again, this one would work well on a regular chainsaw chain, but when you start going into a 404 chain, I found that I was having problems with not having enough adjustability in this one. The biggest thing is the actual width of the drive links would no longer fit in my track here without me loosening these bolts, and then it was too big of a chain for these guide rails built into this. And then the other thing is this one didn't have any adjustability to pull your track system out a little bit, and so I was actually cutting into the chain itself and not the teeth, whereas this one I can actually slide this in and out so that I am centering that chain directly underneath the very most bottom part of the wheel. And that was just another piece of adjustability I didn't have with this one. So anyway, those are the biggest differences I see. This one is going to allow me to do every different size chain that I have, from my 14, 16-inch chain battery saws all the way up to the 404 chains for the Easton-made Evo. Let's go ahead and test this thing out, and I'll show you the little bit that I do know about using a benchtop grinder to sharpen chains. A lot of this I've actually picked up from Matt. He stopped over and gave me a rough tutorial on benchtop chainsaw chain grinding a few weeks ago. But the first thing that's most important if you're going to be just getting into this is making sure that you have the right wheel thickness for the size chain that you're running. Luckily, this grinder comes with a little guide there to tell you. So for 3/8 or 404 chain, right there, that is the right size thickness of wheel for this style of chain. So if you're going to get this benchtop grinder, there's 5 different levels of adjustment you need to take into account. The first one is, what angle do you want to sharpen your teeth at? I think the general rule of thumb that I've seen across the internet is that if you're doing softwoods, you want to file at 35 degrees. If you're doing hardwoods, you want to be at 25 degrees. And then from there, you can kind of just play with different angles between 25 and 35, depending on your personal preferences. The next level of adjustment is going to be, as we mentioned, this is one that I didn't have on my previous one, is forward and back, to make sure that that wheel is coming down right in the center of that tooth. The other one that I was having problems with is I was coming down like this and actually getting into the actual chain and not filing the tooth. So this is why I needed to upgrade to this one, is so I had that level of adjustment there. The third level of adjustment is going to be setting the length of the teeth. And as you can see right now, when I come down in to that tooth, the tooth is not making contact with the wheel. I'm actually making contact with the raker. But with this little knob here on the side, screw that in, and that advances the tooth forward. And right there you can see now we're starting to make contact with the wheel. And this is where the benefits of a bench grinder really start to shine, because now you're getting some uniformity in the length of your teeth. They will all be the same distance from the back of the tooth to the front of the tooth, because you have this here holding the tooth in place, and then this is going to be cutting the same distance from that stop every single time. The problem with hand filing is, you might end up making some teeth longer, some teeth shorter based on the amount of damage that each tooth has. And when you start having varying lengths of teeth, that's when you get your chain to start cutting left or cutting right as you're cutting through the wood. This is going to eliminate that problem and get rid of that human error. The fourth level of adjustment is going to be your depth of cut. So as I come down here, I want to go ahead and touch until I'm getting to the bottom of the gullet, but not into the actual drive links. And so right here you can see I'm going to screw this in until we are bottoming out. And now when I come down, I'm not going to be hitting the chain or the drive links, I'm going to be hitting this first. So that sets your depth of cut on the teeth. The final level of adjustment is going to be the angle of your wheel. So there's a knob here on the back, and you can actually adjust this for a more flat cut or a more angled cut, depending on what type of chain you are running. There's different recommendations. I think for most regular chainsaws, you want to be at about 55 degrees. That's why this is highlighted here. That is the most common. But for these processor chains, we actually want to set it to about 60 degrees according to the paperwork with the chain from Oregon. All right, so there's 4 basic parts to a chainsaw tooth, okay? You have your top plate, which is this part here, okay? Then you have your corner, which is this part here. You have your gullet, which is this rounded part inside here. This should look like a crescent-shaped moon. And then you have your raker or depth gauge here. Now what we're looking for is we want to make sure that our top plate here is sharp. We need to make sure that our corner is sharp. We need to make sure that our gullet maintains that crescent moon shape. And then we'll talk about the rakers here in a little bit. But this top plate here you can see is damaged all the way back to right about here. So when we're grinding this tooth back, we need to actually take a good bit of material off because as you can see, it goes in a straight line all the way to about right here. And then it drops down where some metal was taken off from whatever we hit, dirt, ice, something. So when we sharpen this, we've got to take it all the way back to about right here, and we want to get back to good, clean metal. Okay, now that we have the machine all calibrated and set up exactly how we want it with all the proper angles, we're going to go ahead and start sharpening. And I did want to talk to you a little bit about sharpening technique because this is something that I used to screw up all the time that Matt actually helped me realize. When you come down and sharpen, you just want to do short taps on the chain because heat is your worst enemy. If you harden these teeth with heat from the wheel, it's going to cause those teeth to dull out very, very quickly, and you won't get near the life out of the teeth as you should. So you want to just tap it and get back off of it to keep that heat from building up. So let me show you what that looks like. And again, we are taking a good bit of material off of this tooth because it's damaged fairly far back. Okay, so we just finished this tooth up here. You can see we now have a nice, straight, flat top edge that is sharp. We have a sharp corner, and our gullet here is completely cleaned out. We've got a nice round crescent moon shaped gullet there. We're going to go ahead and file all the rest of the teeth exactly the same as this one, and then we'll go ahead and repeat the process for the right teeth. right, so I got all the left teeth sharpened. I mentioned before that you want to just come down and tap the metal in very short spurts so that you don't heat up the metal and harden the steel. And you'll know if you do because you will actually see the teeth turn blue a little bit. And if you do that, then you need to take the teeth back even further until you get rid of that blue. And again, you want to do it just short little light touches at a time. Now you might be noticed that I am sharpening at about 35 degrees, which contrasts what I said earlier, which was to sharpen for softwoods at 35 and hardwoods at 25. But in talking with Matt, the firewood guy, he said that he sharpens all of his teeth at 35 degrees, and he has played with all of these angles and everything, and he says that he has the best luck. You know, obviously the higher the degree, the more aggressive it's going to cut, but the quicker, technically in theory, it would dull. But he says he sharpens at 35 degrees, and he makes thousands of cords of wood a year. So if that's what he said he uses, I'm going to use the same thing. Now all of our cutting teeth are sharp left and right. We're going to go ahead and take care of our rakers. And to do that, we're going to put the chain angle at 0 degrees. We're going to swap the head back to 90 degrees. And we're going to use our raker guide to set our first raker manually, and then we'll calibrate the machine to match that, and then we'll use the machine to do all the rest of them. So this tool here comes in most chainsaw sharpening packs, but basically what you do is set this end right on the tooth, and then this drops down to what your raker should be. And so we're just going to file that raker whatever it should be at. Now that that one is set manually, we'll back it up right underneath the wheel, put it so that this comes in contact. Okay, that's set. Now we know that this raker here is set exactly where it's supposed to be. So we're going to bring this down until we make contact, and then we're going to adjust this until it comes right down and sits right on top of that raker. Now that we have our maximum depth set, we have repeatability. So you can see right now the wheel is just barely touching that tooth, and what is stopping it from going any deeper is that set screw up there. So now we can go ahead and do the right and left teeth all at the same time, just like that. Well, there you go, guys. This chain is all dressed back up and ready to be put back into service. The main benefits of using something like this over sharpening by hand is consistency, repeatability, and speed. I know there's going to be guys out there that say, oh, I can sharpen a chain better than that, or sharper than that by hand, or faster than that by hand. And that may be true. I'm not here to say that this is the sharpest chain that's ever existed and nobody sharpened one better by hand. My thing is, for a beginner or somebody who's just learning how to sharpen chainsaw chains, this thing takes all of the guesswork out of it. You set all your angles up ahead of time, and then once you get it dialed in and calibrated, it's just boom, 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 one tooth right after the other. And I'll tell you what, I think you'd be hard pressed to file a chain by hand faster than what somebody could do with one of these benchtop grinders here. And the other thing, if you're filing by hand, I highly doubt you would be able to make it as consistent as this, as far as tooth length on all of them, because it's a jig, right? Everything in here is going to be set exactly the same. It's just very hard to get each tooth exactly the same length if you're filing by hand. And not only that, but when you're filing by hand, to get a straight pass and not want to round that tooth at all is something that takes years and years and years of experience to get right. And with something like this, you don't need years and years of experience to be able to sharpen a chain. Anyways, guys, that's about all I've got for you today. Again, I will leave a link to this in the description below. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, give me a big thumbs up, click that subscribe button, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.